Well, hello again, and welcome to Arthur Brown Photography. It's been a few weeks since I've made any videos. A few reasons for that. Mainly I've been having a few health problems, but also I've been busy making videos for one of my other channels, Peak TV. One of the things I'm doing for Peak TV is making a series of short documentaries about the antique centres that are in the central part of the UK. And I've been around quite a few of these antique centres, and it was a visit to one yesterday actually in Sheffield that has prompted me to make this video today. Amongst my collection of old vintage bits and pieces, vintage camera gear, I had an old Canon FD mount camera that I think it belonged to my mother-in-law many years ago. But it had quite a nice lens on it, a 50mm f1.8. So I bought an adapter so I can fit the Canon FD lens onto a Sony body. Now this has proved quite successful, and I thought, well, perhaps I'd have a look for a few other Canon FD mount lenses to go alongside it. So I've built up a small collection bought from eBay. But I was out yesterday at an antique centre in Sheffield, and I found a 28mm f2.8 Canon FD lens, and it was for a very reasonable price actually. So I thought, yeah, well, I'll have that. So I ended up buying that, and I've now got it fitted to my Sony A7 Mark IV. Now this is a lens that I'd say, looking at it, probably from quite shanty, probably from the late 70s. It's one of the newer FD mounts with a button on the side of it for the breech lock control. But it's in pretty good condition actually. No fungus, no scratches. So I was very pleased with that. Stop down works fine, focusing seems great. So that's going to go into my collection of FD lenses. But it's really prompted me to share with you really the variety of vintage lenses that you can get and fit to modern mirrorless cameras. Now I've gone down the route of FD, but also I've been buying some older Pentax screw lenses as well, but I'll do a separate video about those. But in terms of the FD lenses, I'll just run through with the ones that I bought. Right, this is the original. I'm trying to get that to focus now. Right, the original 50mm FD lens f1.8 that was with the camera that my mother-in-law left. Again, it's very sharp, works really well. Obviously, with all these cameras, it's manual focus and manual aperture. That's really part of being a photographer, is not doing everything on automatic, isn't it? So then I decided I'd look for a few more on eBay. The next one I bought was a Hoya. Hoya are quite well known in the photography world for making high quality filters for photographic work, but back in the 1970s and 80s they did make lenses as well, which seems obviously, because they were glass makers. I suspect they probably made glass for a lot of the smaller lens companies anyway. Now this is a 135mm f2.8, so that's pretty good portrait lens actually, and it's pretty good for kind of street shanty, be quiet, sit. So I'm looking after my daughter's dog while she's away on holidays. She's a bit noisier than my little ones. Yeah, so it's good for street photography as well, because it's small light and it's got a little bit of reach on it, and it does take a good picture, wide open with a marvellous out of focus bokeh area behind it. So. Right, the other area of photography that I have enjoyed in the past, and it can be expensive, is using long telephotos for doing either landscape work with a different perspective, or more usually things like wildlife photography. I do really like a long lens. It's handy for if you go to any of these things like air shows as well. So even so taking pictures of birds, but again, it can be a pricey piece of glass. So buying vintage lenses that you can use on these modern cameras can often save a good deal of money. Now, the first one I bought was this Canon. Now this is a Canon 300 f4, so it's quite a large aperture actually. So this is really good if the light isn't that brilliant. It's rather unusual lens. It's got a fixed lens hood, but there's no filter thread on these now, which is a bit annoying actually, because they have a slot-in filter which fits into a little there's a little filter carrier that pulls out. The trouble is that they're an odd size and they're very difficult to get hold of. But it's got a UV filter in there at the moment. Obviously, it'd be nice to get an ND filter that would fit. And what I'll probably do is to try and make up a carrier and put a ND filter, plastic ND filters, and you can buy sheets of ND filter material from people like Lee and that I've used in the past. So. I got this at a very reasonable price because there was no tripod foot with it. And if you go onto eBay, the genuine tripod foot for this 300 f4 FD lens, if you were to try and buy one, they're actually more than the lens. Excuse me, my phone decided to go off. Right, okay. Yeah, because they're quite unusual, the tripod foot. They're actually, a lot of cases, more expensive than the lens to actually replace this. So what I did was I measured it carefully, and I went into some of the Canon historical sites, and I actually, when I measured the circumference of the lens barrel where it grips the tripod collar, it's actually exactly the same size as the tripod collar on some of the more modern Canon telephoto and zoom lenses. So I suspect it's the same casting, it's just a different colour, because the Canon long lenses nowadays tend to be this odd grey colour. So it may not look brilliant, and I might spray it black at some time, but these were very cheap, and I'm talking about, I think to buy a genuine black one to fit, I was looking at anything between 70 and 120 pounds for the tripod foot, and I picked this up for about £7, I think. So it's this, and it is genuine Canon. It's just off a different type of lens, but it makes this is a very heavy lens, and it makes sense to support the lens from the tripod foot. If I'm using it, I use it on a monopod to steady it as well, and to help spread some of the weight. But I'm very pleased with that as a purchase. Right, the next one is even more extreme. So this beast is an ancient Vivitar. And I suspect it's probably the same as the Tokina lenses of the day, just badged, engineered. But it's got a captive lens hood as well. This does have the filter thread. Now this is 400mm f5.6. Now I have had a lens of this size before, because I had the Canon 400 f5.6 that I bought because a few years ago, because I was planning to go to Australia, and I thought, oh great, strange wildlife in Australia. So I bought a lens, and then we ended up not going to Australia. And I did use the lens, took it to the zoo a few times, and it was great for building inspections. Because I used to work as a surveyor, so I could look up at roof lines and things from the ground. But it was a big purchase at the time, and it didn't get a lot of use. So when I came to sell my Canon equipment, I think that was probably the first one I sold, was the 400. Of course, then since it's gone, you miss it, don't you? So I picked this up for a silly money. I think it was about £25 or something. So, but again, it's the kind of lens that it's not something you're going to be using every day. It's very occasional use, and it works well. It focuses okay. You have to manual focus it, but at the end of the day, it takes a good picture for a very low price. And again, this does have a tripod foot as well. And it is, again, very heavy. It's not the kind of thing you want to lug about all day. But if I want to do some pictures of the wildlife down my local pond, it's ideal. And if I go motor racing, or if I go to an air show, or any kind of event where the action takes place a bit further away, it'll probably get a bit more use anyway. Now, the one area where I'm a bit deficient in any glassware, whether it's new or vintage, is macro. When I had my Canon EF equipment, I did have a couple of macro lenses. In fact, I've still got one left, the Sigma, I think it's 120mm f2.8 macro lens, because I've still got one Canon body that I kept, and but I was always very keen on close-up photography, particularly out, go out to the countryside and take pictures of close-up of fruit and seeds and all that type of thing. So actually today on eBay I spotted an old Panagore 90mm f2.8 specialist macro lens. Now I did a bit of research on this. It's one of the few that'll actually take pictures larger than life size, and certainly was at the time it was produced back in the 70s. When you search for macro lenses on eBay, you'll come up with hundreds, because every other zoom lens produced says macro on it, but really they have a close focus facility on some of them, but they don't really let you get in to take details, and they certainly don't magnify anything. They're all right for fairly close up things, but they're no good for taking pictures of insects or plants and things really. you really do need a specialist macro lens for that. And in the past I've used a Sigma, and also I had a Voigtlander lens with a very close focus facility on it, and used a ring flash as well to illuminate the stuff I was taking pictures of. So that's probably plugged a hole in my my arsenal of lenses. I'm just going to wait till next week for it to arrive now. So right, I'm just going to maybe myself a cup of tea. Cheers. Best Darjeeling. Well, I say that. Looked at my Canon FD vintage lenses. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I have been buying some, or at least I bought two so far, old Pentax lenses from the probably the 1970s. The Pentax Takamar range. And so far I've managed to pick up a 50 f1.4, which is a lovely lens. The one I've got is a bit battered looking, but optically it's fine. So and supposedly these are radioactive, but not having a Geiger counter, I can't tell. And the other one I picked up was a Takamar 200 f2.8, which is a beautiful portrait lens. That. So we'll have a look at those on another occasion, and it may be that the range will actually increase a bit. The other old lenses that I'd been collecting for a lot longer, actually, because I used to use them with my old Canon EOS system, were the Tamron, the Tamron Adaptal 2 range. Now, for those of you who are not as old as me, Tamron really developed the idea of interchangeable mount lenses back in the 1970s, probably early to mid 70s, which was quite an unusual thing then. I mean, back in those days we had dozens of camera makes, and we didn't just have the well, there wasn't Sony, but we didn't just have the Nikon, Canon, Pentax. There was dozens of others as well, and a lot of them had their own bayonet mounts. So having a lens that you could change the mount on and still get functionality of things like stop down and metering, and that was quite a revolution in those days. Now I've bought a few of these lenses, so I used to use them with the Canon system and also with the Mark IV third system when I had the Pentax as well. Sorry, the Panasonic as well. But a lot of them weren't great quality, or certainly haven't aged very well. I mean, I've got a 7210, which is pretty awful actually. It doesn't really focus that well. I've got a 24 f2.5 actually, which is a pretty good lens. I did have a 28mm. I think that was an f2.5 as well, but it fell to pieces. Shows how well they were made. And then I've got quite a nice zoom. Without getting it out, I can't remember the range now, but it's a wide angle zoom from it's about 35 to 70, I think, it's been like that. And that's pretty good as well actually, because it's got a better close focus facility than a lot of the older lenses that say macro and not. So, but really the Tamron lens is a bit of a novelty, to be honest. But somebody out there in China is still making the Adaptal 2 mounts, for all sorts of modern cameras. So it's quite handy to be able to use these things from time to time. So, I mean, the one area probably where vintage lenses tend to be a bit of a problem is finding the wider angle ones. Certainly in the Canon FD range, the 24s and 20s are very expensive. As are the 50mm f1.2s as well. But 20mm is a very handy focal length I find for video work, particularly with the Sony, because it Sony does crop slightly when you've got the body stabilisation on. So, but I must admit, probably for video work, the 20mm Sony f1.8 is probably the lens I use the most, to be honest. So. But anyway, I'm starting to ramble now. Plans for the next month or so? Well, September, we've got a couple of days away in Chester, which is I have been to before, but I found that was a great place for historical buildings and street photography as well. And then I think 3 days in York as well later on in the month in September. And then we've got our annual, right at the end of September, our annual trip to Robin Hood's Bay. So hopefully this year I'll be able to get the drone up without too much wind. As I say, I think 2 years ago when I first had the drone, did get some nice shots, but last year I took the drone and it was too windy to fly it. So anyway, right. The only other moan I've got, if you've got time for a moan, is that as a video maker, I also like to do a bit of my own music for the videos, and I've had my own home studio for many years now. But the one bit of kit that I find keeps breaking are audio interfaces, particularly the multi-track ones. I'm on my third or fourth now. They last about 2 years. In fact, this one I'm just about to send back. It's only lasted 10 months. Whereas a lot of the other gear, I've got synthesizers that I bought in the 1980s and still working fine. So that's a bit of a mystery why. They're not cheap bits of kit either. But anyway, that's today's moan over. So get this packed off and sent off back to the manufacturers for a warranty claim. Right. If any of you want to see any of my other channels, you can have a look at Peak TV. There's a series of short films there on events and various things in the Peak District, new shops that have opened, and also my series of documentaries about the antique centres. I say they're mainly just short films without any commentary. So, but apart from that, I'll say bye for now and look out for my next video.